Packing over 250 high quality effects into a package only a little bit bigger than your phone, the brand new Helix HX1 is for those people who want a little piece of the Helix world without it being too complicated. Taking its place right at the start of the Helix family, the HX1 is for those people who don't want the full glitz and glamour of the Helix floor or the HX effects, but certainly do want to get some of those effects that live in those units. Now, to preface this before we dive right into this unit, for those who are maybe wanting a full multi-effects unit, this maybe isn't the right pedal for you, and that's where the HX effects would come in, as this HX1 in the name, you can only use one effect at a time. So certainly for anyone who likes to do a little bit of tap dancing with their board, or they want a whole all-in-one unit, maybe check out the HX effects. What the HX1 aims to do is to be a completely flexible stomp box that you can change basically anything in it to really suit your needs. For those familiar with what's in a Helix, you'll no doubt be obviously familiar with the countless amounts of sounds and effects that they've taken inspiration from, you know, loads and loads of famous units from throughout the years and put them right at your fingertips. Drives, modulations, delays, dynamics, they've got them all. As I mentioned, the HX1 is kind of the Swiss Army knife of, you know, like single-use pedals in the Helix family. So say for example, you've got this on your board, or, you know, this is just your one pedal. Say you need like a particular vintage style delay for a gig, then it's got you covered. But then if you maybe just need like an everyday drive or a distortion, it's in there, or something a bit more specific like an octave or like a filter effect or something. But of course, you can kind of set it up however you want for any situation that you need personally. So looking at the pedal itself, the interface is actually really easy to get to grips with, even if you aren't completely familiar with Helix. If you are coming from the Line 6 family, then this is going to be an absolute piece of cake for you. You're going to have no bother navigating this. For anyone who's completely new to it as well, it's quite easy to understand. Starting with the center knob here, this is what you're going to use to switch between your different effects there. Now, once you have settled on a particular effect, these three knobs just underneath the LCD screen here, this is what's going to change the parameter of the effect as well. Now, these will obviously change depending on what you are using. Each one of them pretty easy to understand. The arrows that flank either side on the left or the right there as well, that's what will kind of cycle you through some of your options, depending again on the effect that you're using. There'll be more, there'll be less, there'll be kind of different sort of situations as well. Again, really easy to understand. Looking at the home button that's just under the effects knob there as well, this will bring up multiple kind of different displays when you press it once there, just to see exactly what all the parameters are sitting at. But it also doubles as a save button as well, so that you can save any sort of effect to one of 128 preset slots that you can cycle through by pressing both buttons at the same time, and then the right or the left foot switch there, that'll cycle you up and down. So if you do need to change between any of them, that's really easy to do just with your feet as well. Sticking with the switches at the bottom as well, they're really easy to understand. The left one is just your simple on off for each effect. Some of them will be slightly different as well, particularly some of the delays. They've got more of a kind of momentary sort of option that you press and hold on the button, and it'll activate the effect, and it will be quite specific per each effect that uses that. And onto the right there, this doubles as a tap tempo for any effect that will use that, and also an option called Flux, which I'll touch on in just a moment. There's a great selection of IOs on it as well, with a stereo in and a stereo out, and a MIDI option for anybody who maybe needs to use that. On the other side of the pedal as well, you do actually have an option to include an additional couple of foot switches with the right proprietary part. This will basically allow you to cycle through your presets without having to press those and go into that menu. Just makes it a little bit more user-friendly, again, if you do need to be cycling through presets. Much like the rest of the Helix family as well, the HX1 will be receiving firmware updates, which you can use by plugging it into your computer via a USB-C, and it runs off a 9-volt power supply, which is actually a much smaller draw than, say, something like the HX Stomp, which means you can power this thing with most you know, other kind of bigger power supplies, and it doesn't need to use its own individual one. The box does come with a power supply, so you can just run it off of an individual one if you want to. Another thing to mention with the HX1 is it actually does include an input impedance option as well, which basically means if you're changing between, say, single coils and humbuckers with different guitars, you'll be able to adjust the input gain so you're not finding that there's, you know, crazy spikes in your volume if you change to something with slightly hotter pickup switch. It's just a really good kind of user feature which will come in handy if you're using this at gigs. Another cool feature about the HX1, obviously, this is more in line if you are just going to be using this just by itself for any gig, is it does actually include a tuner as well. If you press and hold the left and the right bypass switch there, that'll take you to your tuner, which nice and bright for if you're on stage, and both of the lights there will light up when you are in tune. So circling back to the previously mentioned Flux control, now this is one of the coolest things I feel they have featured in the HX1. Basically what this does, if you're familiar with snapshots with the, you know, the other Helix family, it does something quite similar to that. But for those who are unaware, basically what this will do is this allows you to change the parameters on any of the effects that you're sitting on, and that could be multiple at once, it could be, you know, just one at a time. So for example, I've set up this transistor tape patch here that when the Flux control is off, it's quite a short sort of slap back delay. And then if I hit the control, you'll notice just on the screen there that that time has ramped up to something just that little bit longer, which essentially is giving me 2 delay times within the one patch here, meaning I don't need to switch over to something else if I did need a longer delay. The way that you set this up as well, it's basically you select whichever parameter you're going to change. So for example, let's do the feedback here. Now these knobs up the top, you can actually push them in. So if you press that and you hold it and start to turn it, you'll notice that there's 2 little notches that have now appeared on the effect. Now, when the Flux is off, it'll control the very first one, which is on the left side there. And when you activate it, it'll move to the next one. Now, we don't want 100% feedback on the delay there unless we want some crazy noises. But then you'll see that that's saved as that, and that's us changing between our 2 Flux options just by pressing the button. So you may notice that when I hit the Flux button there was almost kind of a ramp up to that next delay sound there, which, you know, could be very usable in a lot of situations. As you'll hear later in this video, I'm going to use it on a pitch effect, which will sort of simulate the sound of a whammy. But say for something like a distortion where you want that more kind of immediate change, it's very easy to select that for each patch that you do save. If you just cycle using the arrows here, you'll notice these curves and time options. Now this is basically what's going to determine how long it changes between the Flux options, you know, from your first one to your second one here. So it's really, really customizable, but you'll notice now that on our first one, and you hit the next one, it's an immediate change there just as soon as you hit it. Now, obviously with the delays and some of the more, you know, time-based ones, you're going to get that sort of, you know, crazy kind of clock noise kind of happening with it as well, which some people like, so it could be usable for your situation as well. But as I said, for more of the distortions, maybe some of the dynamics sort of changes and whatnot, this will give you just the option to immediately click it on and it changes. Okay, so let's check out what else the HX1 has got to offer. I'm just going to cycle through some of my kind of favorite sounds, show you what it can do, show you just a very small scope of the sounds that are built into this pedal. Today I'm using this Fender guitar exclusive Ultra Strat that's loaded with a humbucker and a couple of noiseless pickups, and it sounds great. And I'm going through a Supro Black Magic, total clean tone, no reverb, no nothing. Everything's coming from the pedal. Now, as far as who this unit is for, as I've mentioned several times throughout this video, if you are a bit of a kind of pedal tap dancer, or you do need more than one at a time from a single unit, certainly the HX Effects is going to be the one that you're going to be looking for. If you do need a bit of a Swiss Army knife, say, you know, you have your main pedal board, but you need to kind of interchange a few different sounds for different gigs, for different occasions, you know, something like this is going to come in real handy, because it basically just, you can change it to whatever you want, and you know, with 250 different effects, including a looper, which I actually forgot to mention earlier. So this thing's kind of got everything in the one package. But even for somebody who's, you know, maybe studio use, or, you know, predominantly plays guitar in the house, this just gives you the option to really experiment with a lot of different pedals without getting too overwhelmed with kind of choice, you know, in terms of combining different ones together. You know, your favorite drive one day might be completely different the next day, and then you can go through all the plethora of like delays and reverbs and whatnot, and just really kind of experiment and find what you like, maybe before building a board, or, you know, going for an absolute crazy amount of effects. Well, what do you think? What would you use the HX1 for? Is this something that you're pretty excited to see? Let us know down below, and of course, give us a like, give us a subscribe. It really helps the channel, and we really appreciate it all the time. But until then, I've been Keiran, and this has been the Line 6 HX1. Have a great day.